Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. No, let's do that again. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Please stand for the invocation of God's guidance as I call on Reverend Joachim Philip to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Father and God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for life. We thank you, Lord, for you would have created the male and the female. We thank you for this healthy and very critical discussion, gender-based violence. Something that is close to your heart, for when you created us, you wanted us to live in harmony. And so, God, we ask that you will teach us to honor and to respect and to reverence each other. And this discussion, Lord, will help us indeed to take action, that we might become catalysts for change in our time, in our season. We thank you for the UE and we thank you for the presenter. We thank you for everyone here. We pray that this evening will be a fruitful and healthy one in discussion and, oh God, solutions that we will take to our workplaces, homes, communities. Bless these proceedings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so very much, Reverend Joachim. Please remain standing for the national anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. Good evening again, everyone, and a warm welcome to each and every one of you. On behalf of Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UE Global Campus, Dr. Francis Severin, and Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, proud sponsor of the 11th Annual Carol Bristol Distinguished Lecture Series, it is an honor to serve as your chair for this important gathering, where we come together not only to reflect, but to confront one of the urgent human rights and public health challenges of our time, gender-based violence. This year's theme, gender-based violence, what does action look like, calls us to move beyond awareness and sympathy and to examine honestly and courageously the concrete steps required in our homes, schools, organizations, communities, and laws to create real safety and justice. This evening, we honor the legacy of Mr. Carol Bristol QC, by creating a space where evidence, experience, and advocacy meet. We will ask hard questions about power, about accountability, and culture. And we will listen carefully to the insights of our distinguished speaker, Dr. Petra Roberts, who has dedicated her life to this work. My hope is that each of us leaves not only more informed, but also more committed, whether as policymakers, educators, students, professionals, or community members, to specific actions we can take to prevent violence, support survivors, and transform the systems that enable harm. Thank you for joining us and for being willing to be part of this action. Thank you. At this time, I call on Dr. Nicole Phillip to bring us welcome remarks.
Honorable Dr. Decima Williams, President of the Senate, Honorable Philip Telesford, Minister of Health, Reverend Joachim Philip from the People's Church, Dr. Petra Roberts, Associate Professor and Interim Associate Director in the School of Child and Youth Care, Faculty of Community Service at Toronto Metropolitan University, Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UWI Global Campus, Dr. Francis Severin, Mrs. Erica Simmons Hostin, Manager, Marketing and Customer Insight Unit at the Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, Mrs. Keisha Comijong Branch, Head of Site, Grenada, Ms. Celine Coffey, our Regional Guild President and Chapter Chair for the Grenada site, other sponsors, staff, members of UWI, tutors, staff from St. George's University, T.M. Marshall Community College, and other educational institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Much better. The University of the West Indies Global Campus Grenada warmly welcomes you to this, our 11th annual Carol Bristol Distinguished Lecture Series. We are pleased to continue this lecture series as part of our mandate of public policy and engaging community. The UWI Global Campus serves 16 Caribbean countries across 32 site locations. We provide access to top quality higher education to the people of our region, in particular, meeting the needs of the underserved. As our Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal, Dr. Francis Severin, so aptly puts it, and I quote, the UWI Global Campus is a community campus that meets the needs of students at their doorstep. In the last academic year, 2024-2025, we served 6,844 students, attained bachelor's, master's, doctorate of philosophy, and doctorate in the education level. We served 8,861 students through the provision of continuing and professional education programs and workshops. At the Grenada site, we are proudly led by Mrs. Keisha Comijong Branch, and this team aptly meets the needs of our Grenadian student community, currently standing at 399 of them in the Senate approved, and 526 in continuing education. This team engages the private sector, like the Grenada Cooperative Bank, in featuring regional and local stalwarts through our lecture series. This team also goes out to secondary schools, engages with the community in hit the streets advertising campaigns, forges partnerships with the government of Grenada, and has been recognized in our last council meeting as exceeding its targets in engaging students over the last academic year. I think they deserve a hand. This year, we are proud to partner with Dr. Petra Roberts, Toronto Metropolitan University, to be our feature speaker on the topic, Gender-Based Violence, What Does Action Look Like? This partnership is a special one as it forms part of the Faculty Mobility for Partnership Building Program, which provides opportunities for Canadian faculty to do short-term research and teach in Latin America and the Caribbean. The program, funded by Global Affairs Canada, supports Canada's education relations and engagements in the region by advancing institutional partnerships in areas of research, student mobility, joint programming, and capacity building. This year, we are not only hosting a lecture, we are taking it one step further with a workshop for social workers, police officers, and other practitioners from Grenada and Carriacou to better equip them for action. We extend our sincere thanks to Grenada Cooperative Bank. The bank's contribution is indeed noteworthy as they've been our sponsor from the inception of this lecture series. Cooperative Bank, we want to commend you for your excellent service to the Grenadian community. We are happy to continue the lecture in the name of Mr. Carol Bristol, former chairman of our Territorial Advisory Committee and former tutor. The Bristol family is not physically present with us today, but they will be joining us online. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 11th annual Carol Bristol Distinguished Lecture Series. Thank you very much for coming and enjoy this evening's lecture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Philip. Now, please join me in welcoming Mrs. Erica Simmons-Hostin, Manager, Marketing and Customer Insight Unit at Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, to make brief remarks.
Honorable Joseph Andel, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Trade, Export Development, is he here? No. Honorable Philip Telesford, Minister of Health, Honorable Decima Williams, President of the Senate, Reverend Joachim Philip of the People's Church, Dr. Petra Roberts, Associate Professor and Interim Associate Director in the School of Child and Youth Care, Faculty of Community Services at Toronto Metropolitan University, Dr. Francis Severin, Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UE Global Campus, joining us online, Dr. Nicole Phillip, Director of the UE Global Campus Sites and Honorary Consul to Japan, Ms. Keisha Kamajan Branch, Head of Site, UE Global Campus, Ms. Claudia Halley, Program Officer and Subject Matter Expert at the UE Global Campus, Ms. Selina Curfey, Regional Guild President and Chapter Chair of the Grenada site, other sponsors, staff and tutors of the UE Global Campus, SGU, TAMCC, and other educational institutions, members of the Guild, alumni, media partners, online practitioners, teachers, students, and the wider UE Global Campus community, specially invited guests. Good evening, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to partner once again with the UE for the 11th Annual Carol Bristol Distinguished Lecture Series. On behalf of Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, I warmly welcome you to this evening's event. As a bank that is deeply rooted in the Grenadian community for almost 94 years, We understand that our responsibility goes far beyond simply being a financial institution. We see ourselves as a partner in helping the communities in which we operate to grow stronger, safer, and more resilient. Through our community pillars of education, health, sports, the environment, culture, and the performing arts, we continue to invest in our people because that commitment is essential to who we are and how we operate. Supporting initiatives like this lecture is therefore critical because they bring important issues to the forefront. But even more important is moving beyond discussion to action. As a community, we have become increasingly aware of gender-based violence in recent times. We must recognize that this issue affects not only the individual households we hear about, but also our society as a whole, with consequences that are far-reaching. This evening's lecture gives us an opportunity to consider what meaningful action looks like. The word action challenges us to move from awareness and concern to tangible steps that create change. Economic empowerment and social well-being are deeply interconnected. As a socially responsible corporate citizen, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited believes that when individuals feel safe, they are better able to participate fully in society, pursue opportunities, and contribute meaningfully to national development. And of course, along that journey, Core Bank remains committed to providing personalized financial solutions that support individuals in achieving their goals and contributing to Grenada's overall economic growth. We are honored to support this lecture, the conversations it will inspire, and more importantly, the actions it can ignite. We commend the UWI for hosting another impactful event. As we listen and engage this evening, let us be reminded that ending gender-based violence is a shared responsibility, and Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited stands ready to assist in any way possible because every action counts. Thank you, and do enjoy this evening's lecture.
Thank you, Mrs. Simmons-Houston, for your bank's continued support for this lecture series. I now call on Ms. Claudia Halley, Program Officer and Subject Matter Expert at the University of the West Indies Global Campus, Grenada, who will introduce our featured speaker.
Honorable Philip Telesford, Honorable Dr. Decima Williams, Dr. Charmaine Christopher, and Ms. Judy-Ann Auld, other senior government officials, Reverend Joachim Philip, Dr. Francis Severin, Mrs. Erica Simmons-Houston, Dr. Nicole Phillip, Mrs. Keisha Commission Branch, Ms. Selena Coffey, other sponsors, staff and tutors of the UWI Global Campus, SGU, TAMCC, and other educational institutions, members of the Guild, alumni, media partners, online participants, teachers, students, and the wider UWI Global Campus community, especially invited guests. Dr. Petra Roberts is an associate professor and interim associate director in the School of Child and Youth Care, Faculty of Community Services at Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU, where she teaches at both undergraduate and graduate levels. Previously, Dr. Roberts held appointments at Algoma University, the University of Manitoba, and the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. She holds a BA, BSW, MSW, a graduate diploma in population health, and a PhD in social work. She has over 20 years of professional practice experience in child welfare, child and adolescent mental health, family therapy, and rural and northern social work roles. Dr. Roberts also worked very closely with residential care providers in Trinidad and Tobago and has contributed and explored work on social innovation projects targeting youth populations in Jamaica. Informed in part by her professional practice experiences, Dr. Roberts' main research interests focus on the gendered experiences of young people growing up in and ultimately exiting residential care and treatment services in the Caribbean, as well as narrative methodologies related to the experiences of individuals who have lived in institutional care across their lifespan. Her research also includes the role of Black women in community care, including as it pertains to food systems and agriculture, community organizing, adult-youth relationships, and combating human trafficking. Embedded across all streams of Dr. Roberts' work is a focus on sexual exploitation of children and women in precarious life circumstances. This includes analyzing reports of sex trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago, occurring in schools and children's homes, and theorizing the implications of naming such dynamics as abuse versus trafficking. Dr. Roberts is actively involved in ongoing knowledge dissemination on child sex trafficking to build capacity and strengthen the protection of children in residential homes and schools. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the podium the elegant Dr. Petra Roberts.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, good. Here we are. Okay.
Hi, I am Dr. Petra Roberts, and I know the introduction says Toronto Metropolitan University, and so some of you will know it as Ryerson University. So it was formerly Ryerson, and we changed our name. Okay. Gender-based violence. What does action look like? Outsiders, small islanders. I grew up in Trinidad hearing these names being used to describe my parents most of my early childhood and into my youth. My mother, Fladina Roberts, from Sortes, and my father, Jeffrey Phillips, from St. David. I also grew up hearing my mother say, "Don't marry a man from St. David." She never said why. My mother never returned to Grenada. My mother never returned to Grenada, but the first opportunity she got, she sent me with my aunt to visit her birthplace. I think that radicalized me. I think that radicalized me. After being dropped off at the main road, it was a long walk on dirt gravel road to get to the house, which was a 2-room wooden structure. Seeing my cousins running off to school with no shoes, no electricity, and late evenings spent telling stories under the moonlight sitting under the trees, the outside kitchen, the early morning cocoa tea made in a large pot on an open fire, the smell and the sight of the oil from the cocoa simmering in the rich, thick color of freshly grated cocoa. And a young woman bringing the newsletter from the New Jewel movement wrapped in a kitchen towel. In 1979, I stood proudly in the savannah, witnessing the speeches of Fidel Castro, Michael Manley, and Maurice Bishop. In 1983, I left Trinidad for university in Canada with a promise to return home and to return to Grenada to work for the revolution. 2 months later, the revolution ended. I have returned in the past, but now I have returned, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah. Trigger warning. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that this presentation discusses gender-based violence, including forms of abuse, trauma, and their impacts on women, families, and communities. These topics may be distressing and may evoke strong emotional responses for some audience members, particularly those with personal professional experiences related to violence. I ask that you engage in a way that feels safe and appropriate for you. Please feel free to take a break or step away if needed. Your well-being is important. A few weeks ago in Ontario, Canada, May 8th or 9th, we awoke to the news that a 17-year-old killed his girlfriend, age 17, her sister, age 15, and their mother, age 49. In the United States, in the first half of April 2026, 6 Black women were killed by their husbands or intimate partners. In the 7th case, 1 was killed by her son. The women, Dr. Fairfax, a dentist, killed by her husband, a former lieutenant governor. Pastor Tammy, killed by her husband, who she recently posted being honored and blessed to be married to an amazing man of God. Vice Mayor Nancy Brown, Ashley Robinson, Kelesha Bands, shot in the face. She was 14 weeks pregnant. Devonta Curtis, beaten to death with a hammer. Reports indicated that her husband allegedly Googled how to kill someone with a hammer. Barbara Deere, a speech pathologist, was shot and killed by her son. Between February and May 3rd, 2026, 4 women were killed in Grenada. Melva Warwood, 66, Tracy Moses, 25, Alexandra Led Hippolyte, 22, and Teresha Sebastian, 18. Just give an overview of the lecture tonight. It will cover gender-based violence, specifically violence against women. I will briefly explore how patriarchal beliefs, religious doctrine, education, and sociocultural norms impact and influence gender-based violence and IPV, intimate partner violence. I will acknowledge the work already being done in the Caribbean and in Grenada. The definition of gender is inclusive of men, women, etc. However, in all statistics, men kill women, hence the focus on violence against women. The lecture will conclude with what actions look like when 2 regions in Ontario declared or called gender-based violence an epidemic, and I would also identify those actions that may be transferable to Grenada and may support actions that are already happening in policy and underground. These actions definitely also include working with men. Some definitions before we proceed. Gender, an expression of masculinity and femininity that is socially constructed, dictated, and enforced. And by socially constructed, we mean the roles that are determined socially, the behaviors, activities, and attributes that society considers appropriate for men and women. These roles are contextual and influenced by a society's culture and traditions, as well as prevailing religious belief. Some of my colleagues would say the meaning is specifically anatomical difference between men and women. Men have a penis, women have a vagina. That's the difference. Gender-based violence refers to harmful acts directed at individuals based on their gender, gender identity, or perceived gender, and is rooted in gender inequality and unequal power relations in society. Although women are more frequently affected, gender-based violence can also affect men, boys, and includes discrimination against two-spirited, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, plus other identities not named in the acronym 2SL LGBTQ plus populations. And two-spirit is an indigenous term for people whose gender, sexual, and spiritual identity does not fit neatly into Western male-female categories. It is rooted in specific indigenous cultures in North America. Violence and abuse can take many forms, such as physical, the hitting, the pinching, the pushing, strangulation, shooting, stabbing, grabbing. And while I was working on this lecture, it reminded me that I had this boyfriend. I had gone through a phase in my early years, and he would pinch me, and like really, really hard. And for no apparent reason. And then even when I moved to secondary school, complete with my convent uniform with, skirt below the knee, the tie, as a colleague said, the colonial choke. I decided the boyfriend I decided to have is the guy who was a drug pusher. Now, drugs those days were just the marijuana, right? Or just. But my mother was just like, praying that this, whatever's going on end. But that guy, he was older than me. And at some point my brain got it, like, this is not good. And he did not want it to end. So he did wait for me while I was going to the market and called me, I didn't come, and then he hit me and his ring. I got a little cut. So that was the first and the last time that, don't date drug pushers, I guess it could be the thing. But, so that was the first and the last time I've ever got hit by a man. There's also psychological or emotional, like put downs, name calling, threats. There's digital or technological, tracking location, social media harassment. We recently took students to Guyana just about 2 weeks ago, and my colleague, the students were late for the airport, so she's like, oh, let me see where they are. And she just like on her phone and just like, okay, this one is at this street, this one is just walking into the building. And I was shocked how easy it is that you can use these tools to track people. So she said there is consent. I guess when you send a link and you say it's the consent. So there's also sexual, forcing or coercing someone to engage in sexual acts or sharing intimate photos without consent. Economic, limiting or withholding income, the ability to make financial decisions, keeping someone from taking certain paid work. Spiritual or religious, belittling or limiting someone's ability to take part in religious activities, stalking or harassment. There's one piece which gender-based violence, IPV, and women with disabilities. I think I was speaking to Ms. Jacinta, our brief meeting, and she mentioned women with disabilities. Despite this being a significant and widespread issue, it remains largely hidden behind a wall of silence. Women with disabilities are 3 times more likely to experience violent victimization than women without disabilities. The vulnerability is often shaped by dependency on others for care, like for support, for transportation, communication, which limits their ability to escape abusive situations. In many cases, the perpetrator is an intimate partner who is also involved in the woman's daily care, making it increasingly difficult for her to seek help or leave the relationship. Women with disabilities face unique barriers, difficulty accessing shelters and transportation, mobility or communication challenges, higher rates of emotional abuse, interference with their devices, their assisted devices, such as their wheelchairs or their canes. So while GBV against women with disability is a global concern, it has historically received limited attention from researchers and policymakers, contributing to its continued invisibility. We go back to intimate partner violence in the definition. It is violence and abuse between current or former intimate partners who are dating, married, in common law partnership, or separated. It refers to behavior that causes physical, sexual, or psychological harm, including physical aggression, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, and controlling behaviors. One thing came up in looking at IPV is IPV and brain injury. And this came up, again, while I was in Guyana speaking to advocates on gender-based violence. And this colleague was saying, women experience brain injury through IPV, and that is never reflected in the statistics. And so many women may also suffer one or more brain injuries as a result, since IPV often involve blows to the face, the head, or the neck. Often these injuries result from repetitive episodes of IPV occurring over many months and years. Brain injury can happen from a loss of oxygen to the brain caused by strangulation. Brain injuries from IPV receives much less attention. The focus tends to be on sports injury. And these symptoms, you would find that a woman may like suffering from headaches, from dizziness, forgetting things, and she's just like, it's something with her. And even, health officials wouldn't ask a question to connect those two. So women eventually would die from brain injury. So that is a part that came up in the research. Another layer was added to harm caused by IPV. Again, very recent. The Supreme Court of Canada recently, May 15, 2026, recognized a new legal basis of claim of intimate partner violence. The case was about whether a person can claim damages money for the tort of intimate partner violence. I needed to remind myself what a tort is. A tort is a type of civil legal claim where a person asks for damages because someone else caused them harm. So in this case, the court had to decide whether existing torts, such as assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress, are enough to address the harm caused by coercive and controlling conduct in an intimate relationship, and whether a new tort should be recognized. So the court agreed that existing torts do not fully address the full harm caused by intimate partner violence. They agreed that a new tort of IPV should be recognized. So IPV is best understood as coercive and controlling conduct, and the kind of conduct that limits a person's dignity, autonomy, and equality in the relationship. And so it's not limited to separate acts of physical violence, and may also include conduct such as isolation, humiliation, surveillance, financial control, sexual coercion, and intimidation. So women who are survivors of abuse have a new tort in which they can seek financial compensation. Femicide. Femicide is the killing of women and girls just because they're women and girls. It's an intentional killing of women and girls. The perpetrator may include intimate partners, family members, acquaintances, or others across different relational contexts. The term femicide is used to describe women killing as a gendered hate crime, as opposed to the gender-neutral term of homicide. And we have a major example of this in 1989, where there's a Montreal massacre at L'École Polytechnique, in which 14 female engineering students were murdered by a gunman who identified feminists as his target. He explicitly identified the victim's sex as the reason for his actions. Femicide should, the use of femicide is to raise awareness again that violent death of women was a crime per se, not to be confused with the gender neutral term homicide. And we go to consent, which actually, which I should start with consent. Consent is a freely given, informed, and voluntary agreement to engage in specific sexual act. It requires a clear and unambiguous yes from the person indicating their willingness and desire to participate. Consent cannot be assumed, it cannot be implied or coerced, and it can be withdrawn at any time. Consent cannot be given by someone who is incapacitated. And I actually saw this in a dressing room in Winnipeg, in Toronto. Force and pressure isn't consent. Fear and silence isn't consent. Intimidation and coercion isn't consent. And I know it's not only the Caribbean. I mean, I grew up with this, you're in a, teasing sexual encounter with someone, and you didn't consent for sex. And there was this, after the man was like, so what I'm supposed to do now? And you kind of feel like it's your responsibility to, to continue this act, sex which you didn't agree to. And I feel like these things should happen in school, start from, it's not high school, you'll call it here. Primary school, and even go on to adults, because I think even sometimes as adults, we, have a difficulty in saying no, and men in accepting, I did not say yes, I didn't tease you, I didn't make you do this. Unless I say yes to sex, it's not consensual. So now I want to acknowledge the work in the region. Lots of work have been done, or is happening. Dr. Halima Deshang, I believe she was a 7th guest lecturer. Dr. Tanya Hayes, lecturers from the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at UWI Cave Hill, others from Mona and from St. Augustine campus, and from those in the ministries here as well. So gender-based violence in the Caribbean. Existing literature reveals that gender-based violence is persistent issues across the Caribbean, with women experiencing high rates of intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and femicide. A regional analysis suggests that between 1/4 and nearly half of women in Caribbean countries have experienced some form of IPV in their lifetime, positioning the region among those with the highest prevalence globally. Literature that specifically examines gender-based killings of women highlights that femicide often occurs within intimate relationship and is frequently preceded by patterns of abuse and coercive control. Despite these findings, there remains limited disaggregated research examining how these patterns manifest in smaller Caribbean states such as Grenada. And this is a point I will come to again and again, because this limitation represents a significant gap in the literature, particularly given the reliance on regional generalization to explain localized experiences of violence. And the gap is significant as it limits to fully understand the unique social, cultural, and institutional dynamics shaping GBV within the country. I will look at comparative perspective, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada. Comparative literature demonstrate that while JBV is prevalent across the Caribbean, its manifestations vary by national context. So it says Jamaica high rates of violent crime intersect with JBV, contributing it to elevated levels of femicide and gendered killing. Violence against women in this context is often situated within the broader patterns of community violence and insecurity. Similarly, Trinidad and Tobago experiences high levels of both interpersonal and organized violence. And however, the country has taken a policy approach that frames GBV as a national security issue. The National Action Plan on Women's Peace and Security reflects an effort to integrate JBV into broader security frameworks. But the policy incorporates JBV as a national security issue, strengthening the coordination between policing, justice, and social service institutions. While this approach has increased policy visibility, literature suggests that it may prioritize enforcement over prevention and fail to address underlying social norms. In comparison, Grenada's smaller population and lower homicide rates may contribute to the perception that JBV is less severe. However, prevalence data, which is the proportion of percentage of a population that experience IPV, indicates that IPV remains widespread, suggesting that violence is similarly embedded within social structures across these contexts. So we're going to go now to gender-based violence in Grenada. And the most comprehensive data we found on JBV in Grenada is derived from Women's Health and Life Experiences Study, which found that approximately 29% of women have experienced intimate partner violence. These findings are consistent with regional prevalence rates and suggest that Grenada is not exempt from broader Caribbean patterns of violence against women. There were qualitative findings further demonstrate that violence is often normalized within intimate relationships and reinforced by social and cultural expectations. Women report experiences of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that are often minimized or dismissed within their communities. Barriers such as stigma, economic dependency, and distrust in institutional responses contribute to underreporting and limited access to support services. Despite the availability of national level data, there's limited research studies focused exclusively on Grenada. Much of the published work incorporates Grenada within broader Caribbean analyses, again, rather than examine it as a distinct context. And we go on to policies. The policy environment in Grenada shows that the country has established several important legal and institutional frameworks to address gender-based violence, including domestic violence legislation, police protocols, that is, respond to every complaint, complete and maintain report, records, provide support services and referrals, and gender equality policies. These frameworks demonstrate political recognition of JVB as a serious issue and provide a foundation for response and prevention efforts. In one report, the report, 2023 World Bank report and OECD report, emphasizes that implementation remains uneven due to limited financial and human resources, as well as gaps in coordination across sectors such as health, justice, and social services. While laws exist to protect survivors, enforcement is often inconsistent, and frontline service providers may lack adequate training in trauma-informed and survivor-centered approaches. The report further highlights that access to essential services such as shelters, counseling, legal aid, and psychosocial support is still limited, particularly outside the capital, creating geographic and economic barriers for survivors seeking help. Prevention efforts are described as emerging, but not yet fully integrated into national systems, with increasing attention being placed on public education campaigns and the involvement of men and boys in addressing harmful gender norms. Data systems are also identified as key policy gap, as fragmented and incomplete JBV data limits effective planning, monitoring, and policy development. Overall, the policy section concludes that while Grenada has made meaningful progress in establishing GBV-related laws and institutions, the system remains fragmented and under-resourced. Overall, it argues that ending JBV requires long-term structural change, sustained investment, and integrated prevention and response systems. Information, I'm sure those who are involved in GBV, it's not new. But I will just speak a little bit about the initiatives, the policy responses, and the interventions. Through the Spotlight Initiative, the country has introduced the Grenada InfoSafe system, a digital platform that centralizes GBV data from agencies such as the police, health services, and gender affairs offices. It addresses long-standing gaps in reliable and coordinated data on violence against women and girls. The initiative emphasizes the accurate real-time data essential for understanding the scale of JBV, improving survivor support services, and developing more effective prevention strategies. It also highlights UNDP to strengthen national capacity and ensure a more evidence-based approach to ending gender-based violence in Grenada. Additionally, the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic provides integrated legal psychosocial support services for survivors. While these initiatives demonstrate progress, significant gaps remain in policy implementation and effectiveness. Legal analyses indicate that existing frameworks in Grenada do not fully address the needs of survivors and often lack enforcement mechanism. What we see is that addressing GBV in Grenada and the wider Caribbean requires multifaceted approach that includes strengthening legal framework, improving data systems, and addressing the cultural norms that sustain violence. Education for men about their behavior and attitudes, and this need to start early with boys and girls. Expanding peer-reviewed research focus on Grenada will be essential in advancing both academic understanding and policy development. Over the past few months, Grenada experienced a number of murders, as I mentioned earlier, Let, Hippolyte, Sebastian, and others. However, it appeared that the murder of Let Hippolyte became a national turning point. It generated demonstrations, think pieces, topics on radio, TV talk shows, with a call for multi-level reform, policy systems, and societal change. Some suggestions or demands made included strengthening the justice system, accountability and monitoring of offenders, implement preventive policies, sex offender registry, improved offender tracking systems, improve the education system to include comprehensive sex education, consent, promote community accountability and bystander intervention, and a shift from reactive responsive to proactive actions. Okay. Naming the problem, men's violence. Patriarchy. The term patriarchy derived from the Greek meaning, and naming the problem is part of the change we need to make in society. We cannot change if we can't name it. Patriarchy, derived from Greek meaning rule of the father, highlights the historical context in which male figures were considered heads of family units. While early interpretations suggested that biological differences led to these power imbalances, contemporary sociological perspective emphasized that patriarchy is a complex social construct shaped by various cultural and social factors. A patriarchal system refers to a social structure where men hold primary power and dominance over women. influencing family dynamics and broader social institutions. Patriarchy reinforces restrictive gender norms and shape how men behave and express emotions. Caribbean men, and I believe modern Caribbean men generally, are often socialized in ways that discourage emotional vulnerability and healthy emotional expressions. Men are frequently taught both directly and indirectly that anger is one of the only acceptable emotions they can express. I was hanging out with a friend and his friends and a group of men in Tobago, actually. And they, just chatted. And this one man was saying about how this person who he just, had dinner with him, etc. And next thing the man died. And he was expressing something about this death. And none of the other men around picked up that, like, he needed to talk about his feelings about, like this loss, because he was just like, we just saw him and he died. And I just sort of like observed that he really needed someone to say something. I mean, if it's how are you feeling about that, etc. But it just moved on. And but I was new to the group, so I couldn't play social work therapist and mess up the main line. So emotional vulnerability is not. It tends to be discouraged, and from a young age, I saw my brother's partner and the little boy. He was spending the week there. He's about 11, and he's arguing with his mom in the bedroom and like really trying to get his point across. So I interviewed what was going on. And the mom said, he's just acting like a baby. And what it is he wanted is that, so his mom works from home some days, and he will be home the next day, and he's arguing with his mom that she should work from home. And what she saw and interpreted there, that he was acting as a baby, while what he wanted, I just want my mom to be with me. And, and so what the message he gets is that, that's baby behavior. Addressing my feelings is not something. So these things start from quite early. Patriarchy is a political social system that insists that males are inherently dominating, superior to everything and everyone deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak, and to maintain that dominance through various forms of psychological games and violence. Patriarchal thinking shapes the values of our culture. We are socialized into this system, females as well as males. Most of us learn patriarchal attitudes in our family of origin, and they were usually taught to us by our mothers. These attitudes were reinforced in schools and religious institutions. As Bell Hooks and other feminist scholars note, we also need to highlight the role women play in perpetuating and sustaining patriarchal culture, so that we will recognize patriarchy as a system women and men support equally, even if men receive more rewards from that system. Dismantling and changing patriarchal culture is work that men and women must do together. And it goes on to say that patriarchal violence is in the home between the patriarchal parents and children, and the domineering part is, it's a belt, corporal punishment, etc. And that reinforces the dominance. One of my colleagues I worked with, she said that growing up, the father had a particular belt that was for her. And every time she drifted, according to him, that's the belt will be used. So these kind of a sense of who is in control and who is the head of the home and what does mean is reinforced pretty early. Then there's religion, education, and the normalization of JBD. And we see here in the slide, patriarchal norms is the center. And, we see it in religion, we see it in education, and we see it in culture. So it trickles into every part of our society. I had this experience I hope he's not listening in. So, which was so, it was the patriarchy just stepping in. So I am telling, this friend of mine that yeah, we were talking about culture, and I'm just thinking, my ex, we went to, it was a Mother's Day brunch or something, and in Trinidad, and all the all the women, even my nephew's girlfriend, they weren't even living together. They all went and was getting the food for the men. And the only person who was standing there, the man, was my ex, who was European. And, I'm just like, look how early this culture just, just serving, serving the man. And, analyze that and move on. And then we were having breakfast at a buffet breakfast. And we're walking in and he's like, I'll find a seat, get me breakfast. And I looked at him, at my big self, and I said, are you kidding? And he's like, no, And I said, okay, this is the first and the last time. We did it. But then the next morning, it happened again. And it was just so interesting how, in his own way, was putting me in my place and the role of, which, I mean, I could have served them. What I did actually the first day, I put vegetables and then the next time he said, could you put some more meat? But that remained with me of how something which was just a normal discussion on culture, and it became, look, I would show you how it is done. Anyways, patriarchy just slips in everywhere. The sociocultural part and norms, that could be one which I just explained, sociocultural norms and JVP, but it could move on. It's just not individual, it is socially and culturally produced. Control and dominance, violence tend to be normalized, as I talked about in homes and probably in schools as well, and these behaviors are learned. And there are structural factors that shape it, inequality, poverty, colonial legacies, and weak institutional systems to provide support for survivors and perpetrators. So I would go into, I think I skipped over education, but education, obviously, education as well as attached to religion is also a place that, that we need to intervene. Canada. The National Action Plan to End Gender-Based Violence 2022 is a 10-year Canadian strategy developed through collaboration between federal, provincial, territorial governments to address and prevent gender-based violence. The plan recognizes JBV as a serious human rights issue and a barrier to gender equality. There are 5 pillars in it: supporting victims, etc., improving the justice system response, advancing Indigenous-led approaches, and strengthening social infrastructure. So gender-based violence in Canada, 1 woman or girl is violently killed every 48 hours. Okay. Women are 5 times more likely to experience sexual assault. 65% of us know a woman who had experienced abuse. 44% experienced IPV. And one of the startling statistics here is that 26% of women killed by an intimate partner in 2022 were Indigenous, though they make up less than 5% of the women in Canada. So 26% of women killed are Indigenous women, and with such a small part of the population. GBV and IPV remain widespread and deadly in Canada. So in 2015, on a single day, 3 women were killed by their partners in the Peel region in the province of Ontario. And one of the 86 recommendations from the inquest that followed recommended that the Peel Region Council declare IPV-GPV an epidemic The aim of this declaration was aimed at preventing similar tragedies. In June 2023, the Council declared IPV an epidemic, and this region covers a significant proportion of the population of the province of Ontario. And an epidemic here is described as a specific health-related behavior that affects many people. What advocates saw in that, it was that a declaration of epidemic, although while largely symbolic, uses a public health framework to help survivors and bring attention to the issue of a sociological phenomenon. So there's an organization, Achieve, one of the largest providers of employment, settlement, language, women, youth services in the Greater Toronto Area. They applied for funding under that national plan. They applied for funding to establish a program called Stronger Together, which is a 3-year initiative, Stronger Together, which is a 3-year initiative designed to support individuals who have experienced gender-based violence or abuse in the past, are currently experiencing it, or at risk to exposure to GBV. The program offers 8 free one-on-one counseling sessions, peer support, and referral pathways to employment, to language assessment, newcomer recent immigrant services. In addition, they connect clients to external partners and sister agencies for housing and legal support. Participants may also receive care packages that include perishable food items, hygiene products, clothing, makeup tools, psychoeducational books, personal safety alarms, bus and subway cards for transportation, and other essential items. For some clients, they have also provided specific support to help them leave abusive situations and begin independent lives. Achieve has established partnership with several organizations, including shelters, because that's the one big thing, right, is women leaving an abusive relationship and finding shelter. So this organization assists women in accessing shelters. There's another one saved. So there's no eligibility criteria related to age, gender, sexual orientation, or race or ethnicity, etc. The program launched with a team of 3 counselors, 3 community liaisons, 1 curriculum developer, a project manager. The community liaisons have built strong relations with external community partners, including various agencies and post-secondary institutions. They've also worked closely with the marketing team to promote the program and generate referrals from diverse sources, which is really a big thing because sometimes you find women say they don't know about programs. So the funding allowed for a marketing team to ensure that they can reach women who need the services. There's an aim of serving 250 clients annually. They also deliver educational workshop and training sessions, while also to strengthen and expand collaboration. So there's another partner. So you have the Stronger Together, and then you have the partner SAFE, and SAFE survivor advocates for empowerment by survivors for survivors. So this group doesn't provide counseling, they more or less provide support, and they do have workshops around risk assessment, forms of abuse, financial issues, substance abuse, etc., and ways to support a friend or family. So these are 2 really important groups that is looking at survivors. And so and they use the power and control wheel that anyone who works with GBV are aware of the power and control wheel. So the Toronto region, Toronto, then declared an IPV epidemic in July 2023. Toronto declared gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, an epidemic. And it came the same day that police charged a man for allegedly sexually assaulting underhouse woman, homeless woman. Again, advocates saw this as a powerful acknowledgement of the severity of the issue and a testament of the community's commitment to create safer and more equitable Toronto for everyone. But the other piece that occurred is in November 2025, which was really a major move. The Toronto Police Service released its first intimate partner violence annual report, covering from 2014 to 2024. And this is the slide here shows the intimate partner violence overview, the period 2014 to 2024. And as you would see, so that's a 10-year span, right? You'd say like not much, not much has changed over the 10 years. So it was 18,000, 2014, and 18,000, just a little less in 2024. What also see, I think in 2020 there was a slight reduction, and that was not a slight reduction, a slight increase. During COVID, more gender-based violence. And so this really is helpful in planning, because this is important about when you have data, then you could kind of respond in your intervention. The police is always complaining that the police is not taking it seriously enough. So it gives a message that the police is taking it seriously. It looked at regions or areas within Toronto that's more calls, etc. And important in that way. They're like, okay, are there more services need to be in this area? So one of the quotes from when this was announced, by actively and publicly reporting on occurrences of IPV, we are demonstrating to victims, survivors, and their families that reports of IPV are being taken seriously, while also enabling our community partners to take a data-driven approach to ensure those affected by these crimes receive the utmost care and support of their well-being. Okay. So 2024, so we hope, the next 10 years, a report come up, those numbers are reduced. Okay, men supporting men. There was an international study of 392 men involved in GBV prevention, and they found that 87% became involved because of a concern for broader social justice issues. 59% were engaged after hearing a personal story about violence, and 55% were motivated after someone close disclosed abuse to them. These findings suggest that men's involvement is often driven by personal connection and relationships. Men are more likely to participate when engagement emphasizes dialogue, reduce shame and blame, and connected involvement to relationship and community responsibility. Men engaged in prevention were also strongly connected to supportive peer networks and organizations that we run, like Feminist Informed Organization, and that sustained long-term involvement. A recent scholar emphasized prevention approaches that engage men and boys in examining harmful gender norms, argued that meaningful engagement requires sustained dialogue, self-reflection, and relational learning. Intervention based on discussion, peer reflection, accountability, and norm challenge and dialogue were more effective than awareness campaigns alone. A growing body of literature supports peer-based or men-supporting men approaches where men influence one another through dialogue, modeling, and accountability. However, approaches focused only on awareness or positive masculinity have limited impact if they do not address power and control. Peer solidarity may even reinforce harmful norms when accountability is absent. Recent Canadian research found that many prevention initiatives continue to prioritize short-term educational approaches while lacking long-term evaluation and accountability mechanism. The authors call for intentional community-based and structurally informed strategies, as well as culturally grounded. There's also a contribution, again, of culturally grounded perspective through the concept of liming, showing how informed social spaces can create opportunities for discussion for men. In Canada, Women and Gender Equality Canada supports programming that promotes healthy relationship and violence prevention among men and boys. Grassroots movements such as the White Ribbon Campaign, formed by men in Toronto in 1991, mobilized men as allies in ending violence through public education and accountability. And Moose Hide Campaign, formed by a father and daughter in BC in 2011, emphasizes Indigenous-led approaches grounded in healing and community responsibility. In 2025, a men's helpline was launched jointly with a nonprofit organization called 211 Ontario and Family Service Ontario with $2.6 million in funding. So this is a relatively new one from the National Action Plan. This helpline provides non-judgmental support for men in crisis or at risk of causing harm, counseling services aimed at helping men break cycles of violence, and referrals to community supports, including employment assistance, income support, and food security programs. And I know in Grenada, Tyrone Buckmeyer, co-director of the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic and coordinator of the Man-to-Man program, a violence intervention initiative that has worked with perpetrators of gender-based violence, specifically intimate partner violence in Grenada for more than 21 years. This program was piloted in Grenada. I saw Mr. Buckmeyer recently on Trinidad and Tobago television discussing the program and the goal of the program to promote peace and harmony in families by working with male perpetrators of intimate partner violence. There are other initiatives in the Caribbean, such as Men's Talk in Barbados and Boys to Men in Jamaica, provide culturally grounded spaces for men to reflect on masculinity, relationship, and GBV prevention. Globally, the Men Engage Alliance promotes gender transformative strategies that engage men and boys in advancing gender equality and preventing GBV while maintaining feminist and survivor-centered principles. Warriors Against Violence. This is an Indigenous men group. Indigenous men, interestingly enough, Indigenous men are more likely to be the victim of IPV homicide than men in any other racial ethnic group. On the cases where we know ethnicity, 1 in 3 male victims were Indigenous. There's this group, Warriors Against Violence, is an Indigenous-led program founded by Joyce and Joe to address family violence and support men in changing abusive behavior. The documentary shares Joe's transformation from an abusive husband to an advocate for change. And I will trigger one in the little 20 seconds coming up here. Oh. This beautiful Vancouver evening. Could you get the volume? Beat the crap out of a woman. I got jealous and choked her out when I got home from a night out. I blacked out and ended up assaulting her. Did a lot of damage on her. The bottom line was I wanted to be violent. I chose to be violent. But twice a week at this community center, a small team tries to teach men they can change. It's called Warriors Against Violence. Okay, so this is as it says, a group that was going on for a number of years. And again, in looking at the impact of violence against Indigenous men and Indigenous women. The group discussions, therapy, the men in the program explore impact of childhood trauma, substance use, and unhealthy coping mechanism, while learning healthier ways to manage stress and resolve conflict. And I will end with this. Oh no, yes, one more. Men's Helpline, okay? That got the $2.6 million for 2-year funding, and I think I spoke about that before, for prevention and early intervention, referrals, and counseling. Ending gender-based violence in Grenada requires stronger systems, cultural change, and proactive reforms. Multi-level reform, data-rich research report, I would say, that happening in Grenada, structural factors, and cultural roots. This other one, again, is a 20-second, and it's based on Feminista Jones as a YouTube clip on talking about these 7 women, Black women who were killed in the States. Okay.
How long do Black women have to beg Black men to stop doing this to us?
What is one thing we can do tomorrow? That's where I would end my speech. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. References available upon request. Hmm? Oh, questions.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Roberts. Are there any questions for Dr. Roberts? There's a mic in the middle of the aisleway. If you have any questions, she will take a question. You can go to the mic, Reverend James.
Good evening, Doctor. Thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted you, can you speak more on the Caribbean approaches? You make mention of the fact that maybe Trinidad
Thank
is
you.
using a crime and justice approach, while Grenada uses a public health approach. And why the differences, and why can't we not use a sort of, maybe based on our region, just a one, just really together approach.
Oh, you mean if the whole region can just have
Right,
one
right.
approach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, and I think that comes back to the whole about context. Yes, we are similar in the Caribbean, but we do have some differences, and this is the importance of finding what works for Grenada or for the smaller islands instead of looking at it. There's usefulness in looking at it globally, quote unquote, Caribbean globally, but I believe it's important to look at what works here and what doesn't work here. And this is a big piece of where you would hear about research, and research is about then let's see what works and developing policies for Grenada. So that's the difference. Because we can't keep all, it's the same as, what works in North America doesn't work here. Or we shouldn't just import it, okay? So what I presented is like, okay, this is when 2 regions decide to call it an epidemic, okay? And what do we do? The police given those statistics were excellent. Okay, so we know in this area, this is what's happening. Okay, so that's the importance of having things within context.
Good night. So I have a question, but first I want to talk about a few things from your speech that really stood out to me. One thing that I found incredibly important, and I hope everyone takes that home with them afterwards, is how you elaborated on the consent definition. Because I think that's something that people should really, really hammer in and understand. Another thing is the way you emphasize GBV as a systemic issue and not one that's individualized sort of issue. Because, in colloquial Grenadian terms, we say, that's man and woman business,
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
yes.
sure we've all heard that at some point.
Yes.
And the other thing is how you highlighted the lack of targeted research and the established literature in Grenada specific to our context. I think that ties into his question as well. Things that work in other places won't necessarily be the best glove that fits our specific Grenadian context.
Yes.
But to my question, the question I want to ask is, what do you propose, right? Or at least what are your thoughts when it regards things like, for example, what I would like to describe as, okay, so usually when we see these sort of situations occur, there's a period of generalized outrage, right? And it's very potent. I'm not gonna invalidate the efficacy, well, or at least the intensity of said outrage, right? But what tends to settle in, we tend to see this pattern of generalized apathy settling in after a period of time, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. So what do you think are effective ways to tackle that sort of apathy and really mobilize people on the issue?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Thank you for the peace and consent. Spread the word around. You know, sometimes I believe having a strong women's organization, like a strong, if you don't want to say feminist organization, that keeps the topic going, or even a strong men's organization. But I would say that keeps it in the highlight. So they are the ones, if it's monthly, they're doing something. In most cases, when you have a strong woman feminist organization, the issue could stay on a little longer. And youths can do that as well, have an active youth organization. With all the protests that occurred after the Hippolyte piece, I saw so many people were really angry and upset. And if out of that, someone could have organized a little small group or something so that we continue to build momentum, like we keep it in the media, we send letters to the, I don't know, they don't do letters to the editors anymore, I guess, because I don't know if people read papers. But on YouTube or on TikTok, or not TikTok, is it TikTok? Yeah, that's the one that, yeah. So something small that somebody keep doing to keep this alive, because it's seen all over the world. Like those recent thing was just like all over the world, we saw that. So it's to keep those things alive is that way, I would suggest.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Doc, thank you so much for your presentation and continuing this dialogue. As I sat there, the question I am probing, I hope you can help me with it, is the correlation between the violence produced by adult males and them coming from homes that are predominantly headed by females. A number of our boys are coming from homes where there's absenteeism of father or male figure.
Yeah.
But they then become violence producers. Is there any study to show us this correlation? And if there is, how can we then help those households to stop that kind of violence that, is produced later on in life?
Right, thank you. And I know there's a colleague there who is you. What's her name? What's the woman who's, huh? McEwen? Hi. I was told that you are very much involved in gender-based violence in Grenada. So I'm sure you may have some suggestion to your fellow countrymen on you are underground. So what's your suggestion?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Doctor. I just want to say that single mothers, by and large, are doing a phenomenal job of trying to parent children being, by themselves. As you said, Doc, in the presentation, though, patriarchy is a system that both men and women have learnt, and that the culture caused all men, well, most men and most women, to perpetuate, to pass on, to socialize to their children. And I am not aware of any particular study that indicates that children from single-parent families or dual-parent families or extended families have any higher risk of committing gender-based violence. The studies that I am aware of have indicated that children who have witnessed or experienced violence as children themselves grow up to either perpetuate violence at a higher level or to accept violence in their lives at higher levels. So whether or not it means that children who are growing up in single parent, well, I should say it this way, the extent to which children who live in single parent households experience violence in their lives, see violence committed against their mothers or older siblings and other family members, it is to that extent that they are more likely to be perpetrators or to tolerate it in their lives.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware that this risk is higher if they're in single-parent families or other types of families.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? A woman? Good.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm an educator for almost 20 plus years. And I noticed from another educator in the preschool, they have a play area. And you would notice they have the dolls, and from time to time, you'll see a boy pick up the doll to play with. And so I'm throwing the question out to us all here. Sometimes the fathers or mothers say to the boy, put that dolly down. Boy isn't supposed to be playing with dollies. So at the time I spoke to the educator that was in charge of that center, and she said, you know, a lot of the times as adults, parents will tell the boys, put the dolly down. But when they play with the dolly, they learn how they should treat and take care of a woman, you know? So I'm just saying that to say, a lot of the times we tell the boys, or this baby thing, or this boy thing, or this girl thing you're doing, and then we have men growing up not knowing that, one, I should hold the lady's hand if she's going down a step so she doesn't fall down. I should open the car door for her. I'm just saying different things, and then you have a generation of women who say, I don't want no man hold no door for me, I'm independent, right? But I'm just saying, from the formative years, as an educator, something I always tell my boys, you have to understand the women, and as well, women have to understand men to know how to treat each other well when you become adults. So think about it again. Sometimes we see our boys pick up the dolly, and the first thing we say, they being a panty man, right? But we're not looking from a perspective of pretend play helps us understand how we should treat a woman. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Good night, Doc. In our Grenadian context, gender-based violence, to me, in the field that I work,
What's the
stem
field you work
from
with? What's the field you work with?
school social work.
Okay.
To me, it stems directly from financial, what you would say, abuse or economic abuse, so however you want to put it. Because of that, you have the whole cycle of violence perpetrating around that. If a child doesn't get what they need, somebody else would have to give them. And in giving them, an abuse start taking place. And that's what normally leads to the violence. If a guy mind you, then probably when you get older and you want to leave, you cannot leave just like that. So probably one of the things that the action that we can take is for men to own up and mind the children. So if probably with all the women in high positions in Grenada, the ministers, all these women and them, and when I go to the courthouse and I see the amount of maintenance cases and, the children are suffering. If action can be taken in that vein, probably we would be able to probably minimize about let's say 50% of the gender-based violence.
So men just need to start paying child support. Okay. Okay. These are very vocal men here. Good.
I know I'm going to tread on very dangerous waters, especially in the context. When we talk about gender-based violence, normally we speak about the killing of the woman. The death of the woman sparks or trigger public outrage. But can we look at violence, not just the extreme where we have the killing, but the violence in the home where both genders are experiencing abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological, even spiritual abuse. And in our culture, men are, interestingly, in our culture, men are afraid to speak in context with their male friends about the treatment they may get at home. And so that kind of support is, like we saw in the video, the support there in Canada, that kind of support is absent. But in my field, sitting with our men at times, they do speak of the violence that they may incur from their female partners. And I go back now to the homes. In working with boys, the boys themselves too get a certain kind of violence, not just from mommy, but also daddy, that is emotionally traumatic for them. And at times in our conversation, and that's why I say I'm treading on dangerous ground, in our conversation, the boys or the males or the men are put forward as the aggressors. The statistic shows that most people who die in GBV are the women. But the conversation does not probe the contributing factors that may result in that particular act that we hear about on the news and we talk about. The practitioners will tell you if the men are speaking. And so in our context, I think we ought to be talking as well as to how we can, in our homes, in our schools, just in society on a whole, how we can help both genders to address the matter of violence, not in a narrow definition of violence, but in a broad definition of violence. Help both genders, male and female,
Okay.
address the matter.
Right, yeah, and I think most of my presentation covered both men and women doing it, so I agree. Okay, good. It's interesting only one woman spoke. Patriarchy is just flows.
For my own comment, no.
Okay.
I am particularly pleased that you've mentioned the issue about disjointed or uncoordinated approaches. And I believe that the slide that you had about the work to be done in Grenada included a point about coordination of the work. And I certainly agree with you on that, and I would like to urge us all to pay particular attention to that, because the police and healthcare and other sectors are in fact expected to play their part, perform their roles, the education system and so on. But at this particular juncture, I want to encourage us all to move speedily towards coordinating that approach. Now, recently, Grenada had, the Minister for Social Development and Gender Affairs mentioned in Parliament, I heard, that there is a new strategic plan to address gender-based violence as well. So, I'm not sure how similar or different it is from the Canada one that you spoke about, but certainly coordinating the responses would be really, really critical if we were to achieve the goals of preventing violence, as well as holding offenders accountable, as well as providing services to victims and witnesses, and collecting data, changing laws, and all of those things that need to work together to fix that problem, to address this problem. I believe that I just wanted to add my word to that point you've made about it, and to help us to stress how important it is for Grenada at this particular point, so that we can move from having had such rich engagement, the public discourse, the young man spoke about what happens in the period of what could be apathy. Perhaps this is where we need to build those institutions for coordinated approaches and so on, to keep the work alive and do what needs to be done, so that we will not see another spike anytime in the future. So, and that adds to what you've mentioned about the strong civil society, women's groups, youth groups, and so on. But from the state level, that also needs to happen, because civil society on its own cannot do it. State really has to drive a lot of those changes, and especially coordinated changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the women are coming now.
Hi, good afternoon. Do you think that religion and religious beliefs play a big part in gender-based violence? And if so, can you explain how?
Well, it's one of many factors. I wouldn't say it is the only factor. It's one of many factors. What Bell Hooks would say is that, like, growing up, you go to church, the church gives you the message, about who is the head of the family. But even the church hierarchy, most times, it's men-led, leaders in the church. And sometimes the messages we get, and I'm not saying all churches and all pastors, is that pray, pray. It will pass. Sometime people will, pastors will pray with people for it to end. So there's a role. There's a role that the church plays, and the church could also play the role in ending the abuse. Patriarchy, I mean, the head of the church, mostly, as I said, is men. But the church has a role to play in ending it as well.
Good evening, everyone. I am Hilda Stephen, and I'm an early childhood educator.
Oh, lovely.
I am one of the first persons the little people meet.
Yes.
I teach 3+, right? And with all the gender-based violence, my take on it was, as an educator, what can I do? And I believe that within my environment, it must be safe so that children can express themselves. I must model safe behaviors. I must show the children that we don't hit each other, right? Because it can start there, right? Children, when they come, they don't get something, they want to hit somebody, right? So we don't hit, we share, we hug each other, we show love, right? And we may think they're too small, but if a child from then is hitting, he or she can grow into that right through. Yeah. So we have to look at it as, where do we start? Do we wait for them when they're 13, 14, or when they just come, right? Because we have to make sure that they can express their emotions. If a child can't get something, he's going to hit and no. What do you want? You can't hit that person. We need to share. It may seem like what is happening, but a lot we have to start at the tiny thoughts, and as an educator, that's what I try to do. Try to ensure that my kids can articulate. Some may not be able, but at least you can show teacher. If your friend hits you, tell them, please don't hit you. I don't like it, because it starts with there, and we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. If a politician sees a mic and doesn't talk, something wrong. But I am putting us, politicians, under the spotlight tonight. And I deliberately use the word spotlight, because there is something called Spotlight Initiative, which has become a victim of partisan politics in Grenada.
Oh, that's too bad.
And too often, we politicians use a sort of emotionally based weapon to further narrow partisan ends, even when we know or ought to know that certain things should be taken away from the political fray. Recently, I'm part of the government, for those who don't know, okay? We pulled back.
What do you do?
I am a member of parliament.
Okay.
And a government minister. One of I think it was part of the suite of spotlight bills, Age of Civil Responsibility, which, if anyone interested took the time to read or to ask questions, to try to be objective, would recognize that it was something aimed at protecting particularly adolescent females from predators, very often in their home. And that became a political football. It was twisted and turned around to make it appear as if decision-making was being thrust into the hands of 10 and 11 and 12-year-old girls. And that is where I believe civil society needs to step in, not to take sides politically, but to put forward objective, untainted information out there to the public to assist in good decision making. Because Grenada has become so politically polarized. There is no longer political season in Grenada. You put two Grenadians together for more than 5 minutes, automatically it turns into a political discussion. But I think...
Do you have a question or is a comment you're
just
making?
a quick comment.
A
Sorry,
comment,
it should have been quick.
Okay.
Yeah. So I am putting out a little challenge to civil society to be more active. And like I said, not to take sides politically, but when you clearly see that something that is beneficial to the country as a whole, something aimed at protecting the interests of the marginalized and the disadvantaged, who very often are women, young girls, single mothers, and so on. You need to step forward some more and enlighten the people. Because if I say it as a politician, half of Grenada will believe automatically, regardless of the veracity, and the other half will automatically turn it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Roberts. Let us give Dr. Roberts a round of applause. I also want to challenge the men that are in the room. I must say that I am very happy to see so many men came out this evening. Could you please stand for a moment? Let us recognize you, because I believe this is where it can start. We can have a men's group starting from tonight. And when we have the cocktail in the back, I want to see these men talking to each other and trying to figure out how we can have a coordinated action from tonight. Can we do that? Thank you so very much.
I just want to add, you just, you don't even have to do much. Just show up and you get an applause. So just show up.
Thank you. So I now call on Dr. Philip, who will present Dr. Roberts with a small token. Let me hold on to the stuff.
Thank you. Oh, good. You have to thank you. Sorry, she needs to. Okay. Oh. I forgot to put this different roulette.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So thank you so much for being here. I want to now call on Miss Selina Coffey, who is our Regional Guild of Students President. And this is, let me share something with you. Where is our past? Mr. Ramon Bab was our first regional. Grenada is the president of the Global Campus Guild. First time ever in Grenada was Mr. Ramon Bab in 2024. And this year, in 2026, we now have Grenada being the president of the Regional Guild for the Global Campus. So yay, Grenada. She will deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. As we conclude the 11th annual Carol Bristol Distinct Lecture Series, I am honored to stand before you and express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to all who have contributed to the success of this evening's event. Tonight, we have engaged in a meaningful and necessary conversation on the topic, gender-based violence, what does action look like? And the discussion has challenged us to think beyond awareness and consider the practical steps each of us can take to create safer, more equitable communities. It has reminded us that meaningful change requires collective action, shared responsibility, and an unwavering commitment to justice and human dignity. First and foremost, we give thanks to Almighty God for His grace, guidance, and blessings, which have made this gathering possible. Reverend Joachim Philip, thank you for leading us in prayers and setting the tone for an evening of reflection, learning, and engagement. I take great pleasure in extending our sincere appreciation to our distinguished guests whose presence has added significance to this occasion. We are honored to have with us the President of the Senate, Honorable Dr. Decima Williams, Honorable Joseph Andal, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development, Dr. Charmaine Christopher, and Ms. Julian Auld, Deputy Chief Education Officers from the Ministry of Education. Your attendance demonstrates your commitment to education, social development, and the advancement of issues that impact the well-being of our society. To our featured speaker, Dr. Petra Roberts, Associate Professor and Interim Associate Director in the School of Child and Youth Care, Faculty of Community Service at Toronto Metropolitan University, we extend our heartfelt gratitude. Dr. Roberts, thank you for sharing your expertise, research, and valuable insights with us this evening. Your presentation was thought-provoking, informative, and deeply relevant. More importantly, it challenged us to move from conversation to action in addressing gender-based violence in Grenada. We are grateful for the knowledge you have shared and the inspiration you have provided to all of us gathered here today. To Dr. Nicole Phillip, Director of Global Campus Sites, thank you for your warm welcome and for your continued leadership in advancing initiatives that foster meaningful dialogue and learning throughout the region. We also extend our sincere appreciation to Mrs. Erica Simmons Hostin, Manager, Marketing and Customer Insights Unit at Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited. Thank you for your remarks this evening and extend a heartfelt appreciation to the Manager of Grenada Cooperative Bank for his continued partnership and unwavering support of this distinguished lecture series. You have established your commitment to education and community development as the major sponsor for this event, which has helped the Global Campus to sustain this important platform for intellectual engagement. A special acknowledgement is extended to the Bristol family, who continue to honor and preserve the legacy of the late Carol Bristol. Whether joining us in person or online, your unwavering support has ensured the continued success and growth of this distinguished lecture series over the years. We thank you for your commitment to keeping this important legacy alive. To Ms. Keisha Commission Brands, Head of Sites, the UWI Global Campus, thank you for your excellent stewardship and chairperson. Your professionalism and guidance ensured the smooth flow of tonight's proceedings. We are grateful to Ms. Claudia Halley, Program Officer and Subject Matter Expert at the UWI Global Campus, for eloquently introducing our featured speaker. We also wish to acknowledge and thank the other sponsors and partners, including Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, Grenada Trade Center, Bryden and Miners, George F. Huggins and Company Limited, My Dream Wedding LLC, Unique Photography, and all others who contributed to making this event possible. Your support continues to strengthen opportunities for education, dialogue, and national development in Grenada. To the staff of the Global Campus, a special thank you for the many contributions made behind the scenes to ensure the success of this event. To tutors and staff from UE, SGU, TAMCC, and other educational institutions, members of the Guild, our volunteers, technical team, and media partners, online participants, students, and alumni, the wider UWI Global Campus community, and to all of us gathered here today this evening, thank you for your presence and participation. Your engagement is what transforms an event such as this from a lecture into a meaningful exchange of ideas and catalyst for positive change. As we leave here tonight, may we carry with us not only the knowledge and insights shared, but also a renewed commitment to action. Let us each play our role in challenging harmful attitudes, supporting survivors, promoting healthy relationships, and creating communities where respect, equality, and safety are realities for all. Thank you for being part of this important conversation and for contributing to the continued success of the annual Carol Bristol Distinguished Lecture Series. We look forward to welcoming you again next year. Good evening.
Thank you so very much. We have a little pan and cocktail you may enjoy.
Life isn't one size fits all. Take me, for example. I like my suits well fitted. Getting a loan should feel like buying a suit. That's why financing at Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited is made to fit everyone. Introducing the Made to Fit loan, financing tailored to your needs. Get 100% financing to buy or build your home, purchase land, or get that brand new car. Plus, get up to $50,000 unsecured. And to make sure your loan fits, Co-op Bank is trimming your loan fees by 50% and covering 30% of your legal fees.
Oh yeah, nice.
Don't adjust your life to fit a loan. Get a loan that fits your life. Visit us online or stop by any retail banking unit today. Terms and conditions apply.